I used to believe trust was simple. If you love someone, you stand by them, I told Lena one night. She smiled and said, I know. I was a husband, a father, and a man who thought that was enough. I believed loyalty could carry everything else. Daddy, look, Emily said, tugging my sleeve. I drew you. I knelt and said, that's perfect, baby. Lena laughed softly behind me. She gets that from you, she said. I felt proud. I felt safe. I felt like nothing could touch us. Mark came over that evening like he always did. Brought dinner, he said, lifting a bag. You didn't have to, I told him. He grinned. Your family, Lena thanked him quickly. You're a lifesaver, Mark. I noticed how fast she said his name, how her eyes stayed on him a second too long. At the table, Mark asked, how's work treating you? I shrugged. Same grind. He nodded. You work too hard, man. Lena added, he never rests. Mark looked at her and said, you deserve a break. Something twisted in my chest, then passed. I ignored it. Emily said, Uncle Mark, stay forever. Mark laughed. Maybe I will, Lena smiled. She loves you. He replied, I love her too. I said nothing, though my throat felt tight. Mark said, remember college? I laughed. You stealing my notes? He said, you owed me. Lena smiled. You two never change. Mark answered, I always look out for him. I believe that. I always had. Trust felt natural then. Easy, earned through years and shared mistakes. Later, Lena said, can you help me with the sink, Mark? I answered, I can do it. She said, you're tired. Mark stood up already. I've got it. I watched them walk away together, side by side, talking softly. I told myself not to be weird. He's my best friend, I whispered. She's my wife. Emily yawned. Story time? She asked. I read while listening for laughter from the kitchen. It felt louder than it should. I missed words on the page. After Emily slept, Lena returned alone. I asked, sink fixed? She said, yeah. I said, you've been quiet. She replied, just tired. I wanted to believe her. I really did. I wanted peace. I heard Mark laugh from the hallway. Lena said, go home. He replied, text me. She said, later. Their voices dropped, careful and close. After that, I went for water. I stopped when I heard my name. Lena said, he doesn't notice. Mark replied, he trusts us. She sighed. I hate lying. Mark said, it won't be long. My chest burned. My heart started pounding. I leaned closer. Lena whispered, are we doing the right thing? Mark answered, we have to. Silence followed, heavy and final. I stepped back, shaking, my hands cold. When I returned, Lena asked, you okay? I forced a smile. Just tired. Mark met my eyes. Long day, he said. I nodded, yeah. That night, Lena turned away from me in bed. I stared at the ceiling and thought, you're overthinking. I repeated it until it almost sounded true. I chose trust over fear. I chose wrong, and that choice quietly followed me into darkness for the first time in my life, without understanding the cost at all. I didn't plan to look at Lena's phone. It lit up while she showered, and a name burned on the screen. Mark. I told myself not to touch it. I touched it anyway. Who is she? One message said. Another read, I hate lying to him. My hands shook. My mouth went dry. When Lena walked out, I said, we need to talk. She froze. About what? I held up the phone. About this. She stared, then sighed. You weren't supposed to see that. So it's true, I said. You're with him. She crossed her arms. I didn't plan it like this. That's not an answer, I said. Tell me I'm wrong. She whispered, I can't. The word felt like a slap. I laughed once, sharp and ugly. How long? She said, months? Months? I repeated, you kissed me goodbye every morning. She said, I was confused. I said, you were lying. She looked away. I'm leaving. My chest tightened. Leaving where? With Mark. She said his name like it was normal. Like it wouldn't ruin me. We love each other. I shook my head. You love him, she snapped. Don't twist this. What about Emily? I asked, what about our child? She hesitated, then said, she'd be better off. The room spun. Better off without me? My voice cracked. I'm her father. You're not enough, Lena said quietly. You're always working, always tired. I said, I worked for you. She replied, I didn't ask you to. The door opened behind me. Mark walked in like he belonged there. I thought it was time, he said. I turned. Get out. He didn't move. We need to be honest. I stepped toward him. You're my friend. He smiled slightly. I was. Lena said, stop. She stood between us. I chose him. Those words cut deeper than any hit. I asked Mark, was this your plan? He shrugged. Feelings happen. You betrayed me, I said. He replied, calm and cold. You lost her. I felt small. I felt stupid. You're stealing my family. Mark said, I'm offering her a life. Lena grabbed a bag. I'll come back for Emily tomorrow. I said, you're not taking her. She answered, you can't stop me. Mark opened the door. We should go. I followed them to the doorway. Lena, please. My voice broke. Don't do this. She didn't turn around. I'm sorry. The door closed. Their footsteps faded. I stood there, shaking, staring at nothing. My phone buzzed. A message from Mark appeared. Take care of yourself. I slid down the wall. I thought, this is the moment everything ends. I didn't know yet it was also the moment something dark woke up inside me, something that would never forget this night. I sat there until the sky lightened. I kept hearing her voice. I kept seeing his smile. I asked myself where I failed. I asked myself why love wasn't enough. I felt anger rise, then sink into something colder. I promised myself I would survive this. I promised I would not beg. I promised I would remember every word they said. That night didn't just break my heart. It marked the day I stopped being naive and started becoming someone they would never control again. I didn't sleep, didn't cry, didn't move, because deep inside I understood the truth forming slowly, painfully, clearly, that trust once shattered never returns the same, and innocence dies quietly without asking permission from anyone ever again afterwards. The house felt wrong the moment I woke up. No footsteps. No humming. No Emily asking for cereal. I said her name anyway. Emily? My voice echoed back at me. I sat up and stared at the empty side of the bed. This isn't real, I whispered. I walked into the living room. Her toys were still lined up. I said, Daddy's here, like I always did. Nothing answered. The silence pressed against my ears. I picked up a small stuffed bear and said, She forgot you. My hand shook. A knock broke the quiet. I opened the door and saw Mrs. Carter standing there with a plate. I saw the lights on, she said gently. You haven't slept, I said. I'm fine. She looked at me like she knew better. You don't have to lie to me. I stepped aside. She walked in slowly and set the plate down. She asked, Where's your family? I swallowed. Gone. She nodded once. I'm sorry. I laughed bitterly. So am I. She said, You're still a father. I shook my head. Not today. She touched my arm. That doesn't change. I looked away. It feels like it did. She sat and said, Grief is loud. I answered, This is worse. It's quiet, she said. Quiet can break people. I replied, It's breaking me. After she left, I sat on the floor. I talked to no one. What did I do wrong? I asked. Why wasn't I enough? The walls didn't answer. I remembered late nights at work, missed dinners, promises to make it up later. I said, I did this for you. I remembered Lena saying, You're doing your best. I remembered believing her. I'd pressed my forehead to the couch and said, I failed. The word tasted heavy, as a husband, as a father. I stood and went into Emily's room. I'm sorry, I told the empty bed. I should have fought harder. I sat there and thought about giving up. I said, maybe they're right. I scared myself with how easy that felt. The doorbell rang again. This time, no one stood there, just an envelope on the floor. I picked it up and saw a name printed neatly. Lena's lawyer. I sat at the table and opened it slowly. My hands were numb. The words inside were cold and clean. Custody, separation, assets. I laughed once. So this is official. I folded the letter and pressed it flat. It's real, I said out loud. Saying it hurt more than reading it. I leaned back and stared at the ceiling. I don't know who I am without them. The silence answered again. It didn't comfort me. It didn't scream. It just stayed, heavy and patient, waiting for me to decide if I would disappear into it or learn how to stand inside it alone. I didn't know how long I sat there before my phone rang. I almost ignored it. I answered anyway. Hello. Man, you sound dead, Daniel said. Where are you? At home, I replied. Alone. he said. I'm coming over. I said, don't. He answered, too late. When he arrived, he looked around and said, they really left. I nodded. He sat across from me. Say it. I asked. Say what? He said. Say you're not okay. I'm not okay, I said. The words fell out fast. I lost everything. Daniel leaned forward. You lost people. You didn't lose yourself. I laughed. You sure? He said, I've seen you survive worse. I asked, what am I supposed to do now? He said, first, stop blaming yourself. I snapped. That's all I have left. He shook his head. No, you have choices. Like begging her to come back? I asked. He said, no, don't chase someone who walked away. I clenched my fists. I want to make them hurt. Daniel said, that's normal. He paused. The revenge eats you alive. I looked down. Then what do I do with this anger? He said. Use it. Don't drown in it, I said. She took my child. He answered, then fight smart. I looked up. Fight how? He said, by becoming steady, by staying clean, by showing you're the safer parent. I whispered, I don't feel strong. Daniel replied, strength isn't loud. It's staying when you want to quit. He pointed at my chest. You still care. That matters. I stood and paced. I keep replaying everything. He said, stop. I asked, how? He said, decide who you're going to be next. I stopped moving. I don't want to beg. Daniel nodded. Good, I said. I don't want to destroy myself. He smiled. Better. I sat down slowly. I want my daughter to be proud of me. Daniel said, then start acting like the man she needs. I felt something shift. Not hope, something firmer. I said, I'll work. I'll get help. I'll fight legally. Daniel said, that's the right way. I added, and I won't touch Mark. Daniel raised an eyebrow. You sure? I said, let life handle him. He stood. That's dignity. I asked, does it get easier? He said, no, but it gets clearer. After he left, I looked at my reflection. You're not done, I told myself. I thought about Emily's laugh. I thought about who I was before this pain. I chose not to break. I sat at the table and made a list. Call a lawyer. Fix my schedule. Take care of my body, I said. I'm still here. The anger stayed, but it no longer owned me. That night, I didn't sleep much. But I didn't collapse either. I lay there and repeated one truth until it stuck. I will survive this. Not for revenge. Not for pride. For my child. For myself. That choice didn't fix my life. It gave me direction. And for the first time since everything fell apart, direction felt like something solid I could stand on without falling again. I sat across from Dr. Harris and said, I don't know why I'm here. He replied, you do. You're angry. I crossed my arms. Anyone would be. He nodded. Anger makes sense. Let's talk about what it's hiding. I said, I feel stupid. He asked, why? I answered, I trusted them. He leaned forward. Trust isn't weakness. I snapped, it ruined me. He said calmly, betrayal ruins illusions, not character. I looked away. I replay every word. He asked, what do you tell yourself? I said, that I failed. He replied, that's guilt talking. I laughed. It sounds convincing. He said, guilt often does. I clenched my jaw. I want to hate them. He said, do you? I hesitated. I want peace. He nodded. Then we worked toward that. I asked, how? He said, by separating your worth from their choices. After therapy, I met Daniel for coffee. He asked, how was it? I said, uncomfortable. He smiled. Good sign. I told him, I'm applying for a better position. He said, that's progress. At work, my manager said, you seem focused lately. I replied, I need stability. He nodded. We can talk promotion? I felt lighter, not happy. Lighter. That night, my phone buzzed. A coworker texted, heard Mark's been calling in sick. I stared at the screen. Another message came. Lena moved out again. I exhaled slowly. I said out loud, that's not my problem. Still, my chest tightened. I remembered Dr. Harris saying, karma doesn't rush. I whispered, I'm not watching. But part of me was. In the next session, I said, they're falling apart. He asked, how does that make you feel? I paused. Relieved. Ashamed. He nodded. Both can exist, I said. I don't want revenge. He replied, then choose growth. I started running in the mornings. I said, "This hurts." Daniel laughed. "Pain means you're alive." I fixed my schedule. I cooked real meals. I slept more. One evening, Lena texted, "Can we talk?" I stared at it. I typed, "Not now." I put the phone down and didn't pick it up again. In therapy, I said, "I'm scared. I'll break again." Dr. Harris said, "You already broke." I frowned. He continued, "Now you're rebuilding." I nodded slowly. I looked at myself in the mirror later and said, "You're doing this." My voice sounded steadier. The fire inside me wasn't gone. It was controlled. I didn't celebrate their problems. I didn't smile at their pain. I focused on my path. Quiet karma didn't need my help. I was learning discipline, patience, and something stronger than anger. I wrote Emily's name at the top of my notebook. Under it, I wrote one line: "Become someone safe." That became my rule. Everything else burned away. I heard it from Daniel first. "He checks her phone," he said. "He tells her who she can see." I stayed quiet. Daniel added, "That's not love." I said, "It's not my business." He replied, "You don't sound convinced." I wasn't. I felt something ugly twist inside me, not joy. Not relief. Just proof. Later that night, my phone lit up. Lena's name. I stared until it stopped. Then it buzzed again. I answered, "What do you want?" Her voice shook. "I can't sleep," I said. "You chose this." She whispered, "He watches me." I closed my eyes. "Why are you telling me?" she said. "You used to listen." I replied, "I still do. I just don't fix things anymore." She cried softly. "He gets angry when I mention you," I asked. "Is Emily safe?" She said, "Yes." I breathed out. "Then talk to someone else." She paused. "Do you hate me?" I said. "I'm tired." She said, "He wasn't like this before." I answered, "Neither were you." Silence stretched. She said, "I made a mistake." I felt it then. The temptation to feel satisfied. I crushed it. "I can't be your rescue," I said. She whispered, "I know." The call ended. I sat there shaking, not from anger, but from letting go. The next day, a mutual friend said, "Mark lost it at work." I asked, "How?" She said, "Jealous rage. Accused everyone." I nodded slowly. That evening, Mark texted me. "We need to talk." I replied, "Nah," he said. "She still thinks about you." I stared at the words. I typed, "Stop contacting me." He called anyway. "You think you won?" he asked. I said, "This isn't a game." He laughed sharply. "You always act innocent." I replied, "And you always reveal yourself." He snapped, "She's mine." I answered, "People aren't owned." He breathed hard. "You think you're better than me?" I said, "I think I'm done." He hung up. My hands were steady. That surprised me. The power had shifted, quietly, without noise. Daniel later said, "You okay?" I said, "I didn't enjoy it." He nodded. "That means you're healing." That night I lay in bed and said to the dark, "I don't want revenge." I meant it. What I wanted was distance. What I thought was clarity. Their perfect life wasn't perfect. It was cracking under its own weight. I didn't push. I didn't pull. I stepped back and watched consequences begin, not as punishment, but as truth finally catching up to choices made in shadows. I called Dr. Harris. "I heard from her," I said. He replied, "How did that feel?" I said, "Heavy." He asked, "Did you step back?" I answered, "Yes." He said, "That's growth." I hung up and whispered, "I won't be pulled back." My phone buzzed again. Unknown number. I didn't answer. I said out loud, "Boundaries matter." I remembered Daniel's words. "Silence is strength." I repeated them. "Silence is strength." The urge to interfere faded. I wasn't winning. I was stabilizing. That mattered more. I sat with the discomfort and didn't run. Their chaos wasn't my responsibility. My calm was... I chose it again, knowing every choice like this rebuilt something they had tried to tear apart. I breathed slowly and said, "This is mine." I turned off the light, not hiding, just resting. Tomorrow would come. I would be ready. I trusted myself now, even in silence, even without answers, because holding steady felt like real strength at last. Rachel shook my hand and said, "Sit down." Her voice was calm, steady. I sat and said, "I'm scared." She nodded. "That means you care." I took a breath. "I want my daughter." She replied, "Then we fight smart." I said, "They think I'm weak." Rachel opened a folder. "Courts don't care about feelings. They care about facts." I leaned forward. "Tell me what to do." She said, "Tell the truth. Stay consistent." I asked, "Do I have a chance?" She looked me in the eye. "Yes." My chest loosened. "She took her from me," Rachel said, "and that matters." I swallowed. "I never missed a birthday." She wrote it down. "Good." She asked, "Any history of violence?" I said, "Never." She nodded. "Substance abuse?" I answered, "No." She said, "Employment?" I replied, "Stable." She smiled slightly. "You're stronger than you think." I said, "I don't want to attack her." Rachel said, "You don't have to." I asked, "What about him?" She said, "Focus on your parenting." I nodded. "Emily comes first." Rachel said, "Judges notice who stays calm." I laughed quietly. "That's new for me," she said. "Then practice." I said, "I can do that." We reviewed schedules. Rachel asked, "Who picks Emily up?" I said, "I used to." She wrote again. "Who helps with homework?" I said, "Me." My voice shook. "Who tucks her in?" Rachel looked up. "You." I paused. "She calls me her safe place." Rachel closed the folder. "That's powerful." I felt tears burn. "I won't cry in court," she said. "Good." Later Daniel asked, "How'd it go?" I said, "She believes me." He smiled. "That changes everything." I nodded. "I believe me too." That night, I practiced answers out loud. "Why do you want custody?" I said, "Because my daughter deserves stability." I said it again. "Because I show up." Again. "Because I love her." Rachel called the next day. "We'll request temporary custody." I said, "Is that risky?" She replied, "Everything is." I exhaled. "Let's do it," she warned me. "They might provoke you." I said, "I won't react." She said, "Good. Silence is your shield." I repeated it. "Silence is my shield." I looked at Emily's picture on my phone. "I'm doing this for you," I whispered. Rachel later said, "Remember, this isn't revenge." I answered, "It's responsibility." Before court I said, "What if I lose?" Rachel replied, "Then we appeal." I nodded. "And if I win?" She smiled. "Then you keep showing up." I stood outside the building and felt fear and hope mixed together. I said, "I can do this." Rachel said, "You already are." Inside, my hands steadied. My voice stayed clear. I spoke about Emily. I spoke about bedtime stories and scraped knees. I spoke about love without anger. When it was over, Rachel said, "You did well." I let myself breathe. I felt strong. She said, "That's because you are." I walked out knowing the fight wasn't over. But I wasn't broken anymore. I was prepared. I was present. I was my daughter's father, standing up the right way, and for the first time since everything fell apart, that truth felt unshakable inside my chest. Daniel told me first. "He got fired," he said. "Blew up at his boss." I stayed quiet. Daniel added, "Security walked him out." I said, "I'm not surprised." My voice didn't shake. That surprised me. That night my phone rang. Lena. I let it ring. Then it rang again. I answered. "What's wrong?" She was crying. "He lost his job," I said. I heard. She whispered, "He blames everyone." I replied, "Including me?" She hesitated. "Yes." I closed my eyes. "Why are you calling?" She said, "I'm scared." I asked, "Of him?" She whispered, "Of what he's becoming." My chest tightened. I said, "You need help." She cried, "I thought he was strong." I said, "So did I." She sniffed. "He checks the locks. He checks my phone." I replied, "That's not healthy." She said, "He says people are plotting." I swallowed. "You should talk to someone." She asked, "Can I come over?" I felt the pull, the old instinct. I crushed it. "No." She went quiet. "You won't help me?" I said, "Not like that." She sobbed. "I ruined everything." I said, "You made choices." She asked, "Do you hate me?" I paused. "I don't trust you." That felt honest. She whispered, "I wish I listened to you." I said, "I wish you did too." The call ended. I stared at the wall, shaking, not with anger, but with guilt. I said out loud, "This isn't my job." Still, my heart felt heavy. I imagined him pacing, suspicious, angry. I imagined her trapped in regret. I didn't feel joy. I felt tired. The next day, Mark texted me, "You happy now?" I replied, "Stop contacting me." He sent, "You poisoned her against me." I answered, "Your behavior did that." He called. "You think you're better than me?" He yelled. I said, "I think you need help." He laughed bitterly. "You always act calm." I replied, "Because I am." He snapped, She still loves you. I said, that's not my concern. He breathed hard. You're enjoying this, I answered. I'm surviving. He whispered, everyone's watching me. I said, then talk to a professional. He shouted, you set this up. I replied, goodbye. I hung up. My hands shook afterward. I sat down and said, this doesn't feel like victory. I thought revenge would taste sweet. It tasted like ash. Daniel later asked, you okay? I said, I feel responsible. He said, you're not. I repeated it. I'm not. That night, I couldn't sleep. I thought about karma. I thought about cruelty. I asked myself if silence made me complicit. I asked if stepping back was the same as pushing. I remembered Rachel's voice. Stay focused. I remembered Dr. Harris. You can't save everyone. I whispered, I choose my child. Mark's world was shrinking. His thoughts were eating him alive. I didn't cheer. I didn't interfere. I stood still and let the power shift happen naturally, painfully, quietly. I turned off my phone and said, this ends with me being whole. Not heroic. Not cruel, just steady. That was enough. The courtroom felt smaller than I expected. Rachel leaned close and whispered, breathe. I nodded. My hands were shaking. I said, I can do this. She replied, yes, you can. When they called my name, I stood. The judge asked, are you ready to testify? I said, yes, Your Honor. My voice wobbled, but it held. I looked straight ahead. I didn't look at Lena. Rachel asked, why are you seeking shared custody? I answered, because my daughter needs stability. She nodded. Tell us about Mark. I swallowed. He's unpredictable, the opposing lawyer said. That's an opinion. Rachel replied, we have evidence. She handed documents over. Text messages, work reports, the judge read silently. I waited. The lawyer asked me, did Mark ever threaten you? I said, he accused me. My heart raced. He said people were watching him. I paused. He scared me. Lena kept her eyes on the table. I said, I'm not here to punish anyone. My voice steadied. I'm here for Emily. I finally looked at Lena. She didn't look back. The judge asked, have you ever endangered your child? I said, never. Rachel added, no record of neglect. The judge nodded slowly. Then they played a recording. Mark's voice sounded sharp, angry. She's mine, he said. My stomach twisted. The judge frowned. Lena flinched. Rachel asked me, how did that affect your daughter? I said, Emily became quiet. I swallowed hard. She asked why people yell. My throat burned. The judge looked at Lena. Do you deny this? Lena whispered, no. The room went silent. I felt tears build, but I didn't let them fall. I said, I read her stories. My voice cracked. I make her feel safe. I breathed in. That's all I want. Rachel rested her hand on my arm. The judge leaned back. I've heard enough. My heart pounded. I stared at the floor. Seconds stretched like hours. Finally, the judge spoke. Shared custody will be granted. The words echoed. Primary residence will alternate. I felt dizzy. Rachel squeezed my hand. I whispered, thank you. My chest filled with something warm. Hope. Real hope. I hadn't felt it in years. Lena finally looked at me. Her eyes were wet. I didn't smile. I didn't gloat. I just nodded once. Outside, Rachel said, you did it. I replied, we did. She smiled. This is just the start. I nodded. I know. Daniel texted. How'd it go? I typed, I get to be her dad. He replied, always were. I sat alone in my car and said out loud, I didn't lose her. My voice broke then. I let it. I thought about Emily's laugh. I thought about tomorrow. The truth didn't destroy me. It freed me. I turned the key and drove forward, knowing the hardest part was behind me and the most important part was finally beginning. The doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone. I opened it. Lena stood there, tears in her eyes. I need to talk, she said. I said, you made your choices. She stepped forward. I know I hurt you. I chose wrong. I swallowed hard. You've said a lot of things, she whispered, but I mean it this time. I felt my chest tighten. Anger flared first. You left your child, she nodded. I see that now. My hands clenched. Do you understand what that did to me? She said, I do, and I'm sorry. I wanted to yell. I wanted to cry. I wanted to pull her in and make everything go back. Instead I said, sorry doesn't fix it. She looked down. I know. I stepped back. Do you think this changes anything? She asked. Can we? I interrupted. No, forgiveness isn't reunion. She flinched. I thought it might be. I said firmly, it won't. I have to be her safe place, not yours. Her voice trembled. I wanted to be better. I said, then be better for yourself. Not for me. Not for Emily. She nodded slowly, tears slipping down her cheeks. I felt love for her, lingering and stubborn, but also sadness, heavy and quiet. You taught me a lot, I said. About trust, about limits, about what I deserve. She whispered, I hate that I hurt you. I said nothing. Silence carried the weight between us. She finally spoke again. He's changed. I asked, Mark? She nodded. He's angry, paranoid, isolating himself. I said, I suppose consequences catch up. She said, I fear him sometimes. I replied, then stay safe. She turned to leave. I said, don't call again? She paused, then nodded. I understand. I closed the door gently. My hands shook. I leaned against it. Relief, pain, and exhaustion washed over me. I thought about Emily, her laugh, her small hands. My heart swelled with protective love. I whispered, she needs me. I felt my resolve strengthen. I wouldn't let the past pull me off course. Mark's shadow loomed faintly in my mind. I imagined him pacing, alone, consumed by jealousy and regret. I didn't gloat. I didn't care to see him fall further. I only observed that life's natural consequences were unfolding. I walked to the window and saw the street quiet, empty. I realized forgiveness doesn't erase betrayal. It doesn't restore what was lost. But it frees the person giving it. I whispered to the dark, I forgive, but I will not forget. I moved forward. The heaviness lifted slightly. I felt stronger, steadier. I didn't need Lena back. I didn't need Mark to suffer more than reality demanded. I only needed to be whole, present, and unwavering for Emily. That night, I sat with her picture on the table. I said softly, no one else can take your place. I felt clarity, sharp and honest. I felt power, not in revenge, not in anger, but in knowing who I am and where I stand. And for the first time in a long time, I felt peace. Daniel called me first. You won't believe it, he said. I asked, what? He laughed softly. Mark got evicted. I froze. Evicted? He said, apartment, everything. He hasn't paid rent. I said, that's unfortunate. Daniel added, it gets worse. Heard from a coworker, he's paranoid. Accuses everyone of plotting against him. I exhaled slowly. I see. A few days later, Lena called. I hesitated, then answered. What now? I asked. She sniffled. He's obsessed with you. Checks everywhere, I said. I'm not involved, she whispered. I'm scared. I said firmly, then stay safe. That's all you can do. She said nothing. I hung up. I walked outside and breathed in deep. I didn't feel triumph. I didn't feel joy. I felt relief that I was free and a strange heaviness at how a mind can destroy itself. I whispered, this is the cost of betrayal. Daniel texted, he's spiraling. I typed back, good for him, not for me. I thought about the anger I once wanted to feel. It wasn't satisfying. Karma worked quietly. I didn't have to touch it. Later, Rachel called, how are you holding up? I said, better, stronger. She said, Mark's downfall isn't your responsibility. I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. I know. I just observe. I thought about the weeks following. Mark lost his job entirely. Rumors said he shouted at coworkers, accused them of stealing ideas. I felt pity. Not enough to forgive. Enough to recognize his mind was unraveling. Daniel came over. He called the cops on Lena, he said. I leaned back. Over what? Daniel shrugged. A text message. She ignored him. I said nothing. My chest was tight. That's his reality. I remembered my own fear months ago, before I rebuilt. I survived it, I said quietly. Daniel nodded. You did. He didn't. The strangest part was how small it made me feel at first. I had imagined revenge, imagined satisfaction. Instead, I felt empty. Watching someone destroy themselves doesn't heal wounds. It just confirms truth. Actions have consequences. I whispered, karma didn't need my hands. I saw him once in passing, at a gas station. He looked wild, tired, his eyes darted. He muttered to himself. I didn't speak. I didn't look long. I said softly, "This is what happens when envy runs, unchecked." Back home, I held Emily after school. "Daddy, story time?" she asked. I smiled and said, "Of course." Her laughter filled the room. My heart felt steady. I realized the only thing that truly mattered was her. Everything else, anger, betrayal, obsession, was noise. I thought about Mark's world collapsing. I acknowledged it, but I didn't gloat. I thought about Lena's fear, his paranoia, the mess he had made. I whispered, "All consequences are accounted for." That night, I sat quietly with my daughter asleep beside me. I said, "We survived. I meant us. I meant me. I meant every moment of fear, heartbreak, and rebuilding." Mark's thoughts destroyed him. He lost what he tried to take, what he clung to with envy and obsession. I didn't need to act. I didn't need to interfere. Life, consequences, and the truth handled themselves. I closed my eyes and whispered, "Let this be a lesson, not a curse." We live, we learn, we move forward. And for the first time, I felt the quiet, heavy satisfaction of truth, not revenge, holding its weight. Emily ran into the kitchen, her backpack bouncing. "Daddy, look what I drew!" I smiled, crouched down, and said, "Show me." She handed me a picture of the two of us, holding hands. "I'm proud of you," I said. She giggled. "I'm proud of you too." I asked, "Do you like our story?" She nodded vigorously. "Can we read it again?" I laughed softly. "Of course." I grabbed her hand. "Let's sit." We read together, page by page, her small voice filling the room. I felt warmth I hadn't known for months. Later, she said, "Daddy, can we bake cookies?" I said, "Sure, you're the chef." Flour flew everywhere. She laughed. I laughed, and the kitchen became messy and perfect. "You're getting better at this," I said. She rolled her eyes. "I'm helping you." I paused, watching her, and whispered to myself, "This is why I fought. This is what matters." I thought about the man I used to be, naive, trusting, lost. I thought about the man I'd become, steady, patient, alive. I said quietly, "I survived. I grew, I endured." Later, Rachel called. "How's my favorite client?" she teased. I smiled. "Busy being a dad." She laughed. "I'm proud of you," I said, "not proud for winning. Proud for standing up and keeping steady." She said, "That's more important." Emily asked, "Daddy, can we go to the park?" I said, "Absolutely." We walked together, holding hands. I watched her run, her laughter carrying across the grass. "Daddy, race you!" she shouted. I said, "You're going down." We ran, both of us breathless, both of us happy. Daniel called later. "You look different," I said. "I feel different." He asked, "How?" I said, "Calmer, stronger, present." He laughed. "Finally," I said, "I finally know what really matters." That night I tucked Emily in. "Good night, my brave girl," I whispered. She hugged me. "Good night, Daddy, I love you." I kissed her forehead. "I love you more." I sat alone for a moment after she slept. I thought about Lena, about Mark, about all the pain. I whispered, "I didn't win through revenge, I won through survival." I smiled softly. I won through patience, through discipline, through love. I looked around the quiet house. "This is my life now," I said. "Peaceful, honest, mine." I thought about every sleepless night, every moment of despair. I whispered, "It was worth it." I reflected on the man I was before, the man who trusted blindly, who feared confrontation. I reflected on the man I had become, the man who could love fully, protect fiercely, and forgive without weakness. "I'm proud of him," I said quietly. I walked to the window and looked outside. The world felt still, safe. I whispered, "Closure isn't loud. It doesn't demand attention. It comes quietly." I thought about the lessons learned, the battles fought, the fears overcome. Finally, I closed my eyes and said to the dark, "I am enough. I am steady. I am her father." And in that moment, I felt complete, reborn in a way that revenge could never achieve, in a way that only survival, growth, and love could grant. I breathed deeply and whispered one last time, "This is peace. This is justice. This is my life, and I will honor it every day."